Growing up, both of my parents had day jobs, which worked out during the school year because I'd be gone around the same time they were, but during the summer I needed somewhere to go, much to my annoyance. So they sent me to a summer day camp where I realized I hated outdoor activity and would have rather stayed inside drawing vampires and fairies all day. But something I did enjoy was watching a show about camp. That way the giant fireball of death in the sky wouldn't be able to scorch me to a crisp. Nature! Nope. And on top of that, I could live vicariously through these child actors who look like they're having fun in a summer camp setting. I am of course referring to Salute Your Shorts, and it is the only show in existence with the word fart in its theme song.
Camp wanna.
We hold you in our hearts.
And when we think about you, it makes me wanna fart.
There wasn't a lot of information about the production of this beloved Nickelodeon classic, and that's probably due to the fact that it was an extremely pleasant experience for all parties involved. Trust me, I tried to find some juicy tidbits about the filming of the show, but the best I got was that somebody hurt their ear, and people got whipped cream in their hair. Oh, the scandal. It was a whipped cream emergency. Though I suppose this is rather good news because Salute Your Shorts was one of my favorite shows growing up. This video will be in sections just like my previous ones. If you're not familiar with the structure, I begin by discussing some of the production, I then take you through a few of the episodes, snark may or may not be involved, and the final section will be a brief where are they now, as well as my final thoughts. But before we begin, let's hear that fart line again.
It makes me wanna fart.
Look, I'm only human. I can't be mature all the time. Salute Your Shorts was a live-action show that ran on Nickelodeon from 1991 to 1992. There were only 2 13-episode seasons, though when I was young it felt like there were a lot more episodes than the mere 26. Unlike some of the other classic Nick shows, this one was based on a book. It was called Salute Your Shorts: Life at Summer Camp and was written by Steve Slavkin and Thomas Hill. Slavkin went on to create and write the show, however there's not too much to compare when it comes to the two mediums. The illustrated book is a cute and rather juvenile account of what it's like to go to summer camp. There aren't any characters in it, and it does not follow a story. It's more meant to be a comically written guide, and includes such topics as how to recognize your best friend, 5 creative ways to give the finger, and really neat dead birds. I'm waiting for that last one to be a category on Jeopardy someday. I'll take really neat dead birds for 500, Alex. Steve Slavkin not only co-wrote this book, he was also a camp counselor for many years, so his direct experience was perfect for all of these silly situations you typically see in a sitcom. A pilot was made in 1990, but for whatever reason, Nickelodeon dragged their feet for almost a year before it was actually picked up. Sadly, puberty strikes fast and hard, and even though only a year had passed, most of the kids were considered too old for their roles. A couple did audition again and come back, like Danny Cooksey as Budnick, but the majority of the cast was replaced. As far as casting went, Slavkin was interested in kids who looked like kids, no pristine actors or actresses that fit a common Hollywood beauty standard. At the time, Nickelodeon was considered the antithesis to Disney, in the way that the kids you saw on the Disney Channel were clean cut, fit a certain mold, had perfect skin, hair, and teeth, and so forth. Creator Steve Slavkin says, "I wanted kids and I wanted them to be as natural as they could be. I didn't want them with a lot of makeup or combed hair. I wanted to see them fumbling, I wanted the lisp and the stutter and the weirdness. You embrace them for their kidness." He also went on to describe an instance where one of the actress's parents went up to him one day saying that her daughter needed braces and was worried that she would be cut. Slavkin, being a pretty decent person, told her it was no problem, and of course it shouldn't be, because who the hell says, "No, we cannot sacrifice this art for the sake of permanently straightened teeth"? Slavkin decided to write this into the script, and what resulted was an episode about character ZZ Ziff getting braces. The way Salute Your Shorts was filmed was considered unusual and groundbreaking for a children's TV show. They were usually shot on a stage with multiple cameras, but Slavkin stated that the show was shot with a single camera, then put through a film look process. On top of that, all of the episodes were scored. The music typically came from library samples, and they loved using classical music to give more action-oriented scenes a more grand feel. Here's an example of how music was used, set to 2 characters having a pie fight. Much like Hey Dude, there was no laugh track, which I think makes a lot of sense when it comes to these shot-on-location shows. And you know those laugh tracks are exploited to hell and back and used at the exact wrong moments. I can't even imagine it for Salute Your Shorts.
I want to apologize for hurting you, even though I didn't know I was hurting you.
Speaking of location, a lot of the exterior shots were filmed at Franklin Canyon Park. If you're not familiar, this is where some of the Andy Griffith Show was shot. Here's a tiny Ron Howard fishing at the lake. Aww, he's gonna grow up to be this guy.
What you're about to see is a dramatic recreation of the bizarre events which led to the disappearance of Michael Cimbello.
Sorry, that went a little off track there. Ron Howard is always a hot conversation. They also filmed at Griffith Park Boys Camp in Los Angeles, which was a brilliant move because everything really does feel authentic. A lot of the cast members really connected to this location and described it as actually being at camp and having fun experiences with friends. The cabins, however, were all built specifically for the show. Despite being fairly high quality and having innovative methods of filming, the show had an astonishingly low budget. Producer Courtney Conti says, "We were lucky no one else was filming there. We got the whole place for $500 a day or something, which is nothing. We were doing the show for $180,000 an episode, which is absolutely no money for a 5-day shoot. That's what I used to spend on craft service for Roseanne." Though there were not any huge hiccups during production, just things like minor injuries on set and some of the young cast clashing every now and then, the network was still very strict when it came to certain rules. Slavkin describes a time where he received a note for a scene that involved the kids sneaking down to the pantry to steal some candy. But they could not use candy because the network didn't want to seem like it was promoting child obesity, so they changed the candy to fruit. Gosh, I can just remember all those times I had to sneak into the kitchen to steal an orange, cause if I got caught, oh, the consequences. As mentioned previously, the show's theme song is the only one in history to use the word fart.
It makes me wanna fart!
It was written by Ed Alton, who composed songs for a couple dozen television series over the years. I can't list all of them, but some of them include My Boys, The Single Guy, and Suddenly Susan. The song serves as an homage to the fictional camp the show is set in, Camp Anawanna, which if you cannot tell is meant to sound like I don't wanna. Someone came up with the term slurred homophone to describe this, which is not exactly an official grammar term, but I suppose it makes sense enough. And in case you are wondering where on earth you can get these cool fashions featured in the first season, they were provided by Reebok, as that was the show's sponsor.
It's like people only do things because they get paid. And that's just really sad.
The show did do pretty well, but sadly it would not continue for a couple reasons, one of which was that the network wanted to choose a different filming location, and by that time the kids who made up the cast were already settled in Los Angeles and didn't feel comfortable making the move. The other reason, as stated by Steve Slavkin, was budget and scheduling problems between him and Nickelodeon, though he didn't expand on anything specific. So what can you expect from an episode of Salute Your Shorts? Let's take a closer look at the show, and perhaps we can even figure out what an awful waffle is.
Awful waffle! Awful waffle! Awful waffle! Awful waffle!
Out of all the shows I revisited in adulthood, Salute Your Shorts was definitely the one I got the most enjoyment out of, and one of the shows that could still get a laugh out of me. There are some things that haven't aged well, but there's nothing egregious like you'd expect from a show from the early 90s. It follows a group of young campers and their day-to-day experiences at Camp Anawanna. There are hardly any adult characters, as Nickelodeon wanted their shows to be from the kids' point of views. The only adult who serves as a main character is the counselor, Kevin Lee, nicknamed Ugg by the campers.
Ugly! 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 Ugly!
I get it. Haha. There's also the camp director, Dr. Khan, but he is never seen. Every now and then there is a comical voiceover about a camp update, which was performed by Slavkin himself.
This is Dr. Khan. There's no need to run to breakfast. I've already taken the prices out of all the cereal.
Here they come, here they come.
The young characters include Michael Stein, who only appeared in the first season and is introduced as the popular new kid that the girls quickly develop a crush on. Bobby Budnick, the bully archetype. He starts out as the bad boy but matures throughout the show. He goes from being a bully to a jerk every now and then. Eddie Donkey Lips Gelfin, a loser type who is Budnick's lackey for the first several episodes, but also evolves throughout the series. Telly Radford, who is meant to be the tomboy of the girls group and prefers outdoor extracurricular activities like sports and anything competitive. ZZ Ziff, who is considered the nice one of the group, even towards Budnick, and enjoys doing activities that involve nature or animals. Dina Alexander, who comes from a rich business family and was often portrayed as a shallow person who only cared about fashion, but ended up having streaks of kindness throughout the series. And Sponge Harris, the nerd archetype of the group, nicknamed this due to his ability to soak up information like, you guessed it, a sponge.
What's 89 times 54 minus 3 divided by 4?
1,200 decimal point 75.
It's like living with a computer.
Actually, I'm not even sure what Sponge's real name is. Michael left after the first season and was replaced with Ronnie Pinsky, who came across as your smug, competitive type who was often seen butting heads with Telly. Ugg himself is portrayed as a bumbling type who does seem to enjoy being around the kids every now and then, but clearly takes himself way too seriously. The show always begins with a cold open, much like Hey Dude. The first episode lays out the meaning of the show's namesake right away. Michael's underwear is stolen and sent up the flagpole. Michael considers making a run for it, but Sponge says that if it were him, he would stand at attention, click your heels, and salute your shorts. It also gives you an idea of what all of the characters are like and sets the show's formula in place, which can basically be boiled down to wacky shenanigans. I mean, it's always wacky shenanigans. Despite the kids having drastically different personalities, they all get along and are friends for the most part, and it's a pretty fun representation of what it's like to stay at a summer camp. Obviously, I can't discuss every single episode, I'm saving that idea for Murder, She Wrote, but I do want to showcase a few that stood out to me. The first one is called Budnick and Dina in Love. By this time in the series, Budnick has matured a little bit. By season 2, he's become less a stereotypical bully and more of a too cool for school type. He's not even really seen hanging out with Donkey Lips after the first few episodes of season 1. He's seen more with Ronnie Pinsky, and Donkey Lips develops a friendship with Sponge, which is interesting because in the first episode, he was shown ridiculing him. In this episode, Budnick falls hard and fast for Dina and wants to ask her to the social, which is some kind of weird old-timey speak for a dance or a gathering. He has no idea how not to be a jerk, but after some terrible advice from Pinsky, he decides to write her a song to express his affection. Meanwhile, everyone is hurting their knees due to a rogue rake. Tully and Pinsky hurt themselves during a three-legged race and blame each other for their failure.
Tender armpits happen to run in my family, thank you very much.
Oh, too bad that's the only thing that can run in your family.
Oh, burn! Word gets out that Budnick has a crush on someone in the girls' bunk. Dina is disgusted, Tully doubts it's her, but good-natured Zizi Ziff, who can't find it in her heart to dislike anyone, even Budnick, is excited that it could be her. So without even thinking of the emotional trauma it could cause, Tully tells her that the crush is her. She's incredibly happy about this. Later at dinner, Budnick busts out his new song with Sponge on guitar. Dina is not thrilled.
I have never been more embarrassed in my life.
See, now everyone is embarrassed. Dina is upset, Zizi is crushed, this questionable looking food is wasted. I mean, he used the word salsa in a love song.
Buffet of life, you're a sizzling fajita platter con muy bueno salsa.
No. Keeping with the everyone hurting themselves and having to use crutches gag, Sponge runs to the kitchen to get Budnick a towel and collides with Ugg. Tonal whiplash. In one of the more serious moments on the show, Budnick looks for Dina to apologize, but finds Zizi instead. He apologizes to her despite not meaning to hurt her, and Zizi tells him to just be sincere with Dina and maybe she'd change her mind about him, though she is obviously still hurt.
But if you find her, and she breaks her heart again, I'll always be there to pick up the pieces.
I'm not crying, you're crying. I like this entire episode because it's a good showcase of summertime crushes and how campers interact with each other. I've always remembered it a little more than others. This was actually a two-parter that follows Dina and Budnick a little more, but I just wanted to showcase the first part as it's such a nice feel-good episode. In the end, Dina does accept Budnick's apology and gives him a chance, much to Zizi's disappointment. Tully and Pinsky get into an argument and spar in the lake, and Sponge and Donkey Lips watch from afar, wondering what their own love lives will be in the future. I couldn't help but notice that I enjoyed Tully and Pinsky's love-hate relationship more than what was blooming between Dina and Budnick, and that might be because their chemistry was based on a small, real-life crush that they both harbored during the show. Also, I am living for this sappy synth music. It sounds like Dire Dire Docks from Mario 64.
She blew him off!
The next episode I want to talk about is They Call Me Miss Tibbs, which features the late Christine Cavanaugh. She provided the iconic voices of Chucky from Rugrats, Oblina from Ah, Real Monsters, and guest starred on many television shows during her career. Her role as Ugg's girlfriend is the most wonderful thing, and I think this is by far the funniest episode of the entire series. Previously, Mona was a mail carrier, but she switched jobs to be a park ranger to be closer to Ugg.
It's Mona, my girlfriend!
The way Kirk Bailey delivered that line, followed by recklessly diving into the lake, made me laugh hysterically when I revisited this. Though I suppose I shouldn't laugh too hard because this is the scene where Bailey seriously injured his eardrum due to the impact of hitting the water. Still, I love it. He is so perfectly weird and goofy.
My girlfriend!
Ugg is over the moon for Mona and vice versa. It's a very strange relationship, but it somehow works. Much like the relationship between me and my bird, Mona offers him a Chinese finger trap as a token of her love.
It's a Chinese finger trap, and I won it in a carnival. It symbolizes how you've trapped my heart.
This acting just cracks me the hell up. Mona's new job involves inspecting the camp and checking for violations. Unlike Ugg, who is kind of a dick and overly casual about his job, Mona is serious business about hers. You can tell because look at this intense pocket protector. But Ugg believes that because she is his girlfriend, she will cut him some slack and give him a free pass. Mona, who finds many violations that need to be fixed, otherwise the camp will have to be shut down, is insulted that Ugg doesn't take her job seriously and they get into a fight. The rest of the episode involves the kids trying to help them patch up their relationship. After a string of bad ideas from the kids, Zizi is the one who is able to make Ugg understand how important Mona's job is to her, and that she cannot make exceptions for him. He seems to understand it and fixes the violations immediately. Mona appreciates the gesture, though decides to move to a different department because she doesn't want to strain things further.
And I appreciate that you respect my professional obligations. Sweet cake pie.
Is there seriously anything more pure than this relationship? Though, what the fuck is going on here? The last episode I want to discuss is called The Ghost Story, otherwise known as the Zeke the Plumber episode. This one seems to be remembered by a lot of people who grew up watching Nickelodeon, myself included. If I had to speculate, I would say that this episode was based on a very short section of the book which talks about telling subpar ghost stories at camp. Budnick, who is sporting a hardcore mullet in this season, tells a story about Zeke the Plumber, who got his nose bitten off by a parrot, so he took a job as a plumber. I mean, clearly, that is the only possible next step. One night, while he was fixing a pipe in a basement, there was a gas leak. Zeke lights a match for some reason and explodes. All that was left behind was his filthy plunger. In a very Freddy Krueger move, Zeke visits Michael in his dreams, but instead of killing him, he decides to threaten him with humiliation.
Attention, everybody! Michael Stein sucks his thumb, and he has a stuffed animal at camp.
I mean, I would take some embarrassment over death. I used to think this episode was pretty disturbing as a wee roses, especially this surreal image of Zeke plunging a toilet in a dark, empty cabin, but I suppose it's not really all that scary considering all he does is try to embarrass you and shove a plunger into your face. He also looks like Dennis Farina. Telly also has a dream where she is stuck in a fancy ball, which is her worst nightmare because she typically doesn't like feminine things. Again, better than death and physical torture, though I can understand her reaction. Blaming Budnick for their nightmares, they decide to get him back by challenging him to stay overnight in the woods alone. After he agrees, the kids and Ugg, who was mad at Budnick for ridiculing him earlier in the episode, all plan their revenge.
And when I give you the cue, I want you to run at Budnick screaming. And if we don't scare him, hey, you sure will.
But I can't see a thing!
This is a terrible plan. The sabotage goes wrong, of course, resulting in a bunch of pranks and even more wacky shenanigans. I watched this episode on Halloween purely for nostalgic reasons. Clearly it's hard to be fearful of such a weird-looking character, and it's not one of the funnier episodes by far, but it definitely brings me back to those classic Nick days, and it also makes me want to watch Are You Afraid of the Dark episodes. It kind of comes across like one. Now, because there were so many cast members in this show, I won't be able to touch on every single actor or actress or go into where they ended up. Most of them went on to do great things, others not so great things. So I'll be discussing a few of the cast members who you might be familiar with. Danny Cooksey, who played Budnick, was a child actor prior to Salute Your Shorts. He started in television in 1983 with a small role on an episode of The Dukes of Hazzard, and did a lot of voice work for cartoons and video games over the years. You may recognize him as Montana Max from Tiny Toon Adventures and Stoop Kid from Hey Arnold.
Shut it out! Hey! I'm warning you! Hey, I'm gonna pound you, you little maggot!
He also had a few small film roles, most notably Terminator 2. After Salute Your Shorts, he continued to do a lot of voice work over the years, including voices for Pepper Ann, Invader Zim, and he had a main voice role in Kick Buttowski's Suburban Daredevil. He is also a musician. In 1992, he led the group Bad for Good. don't know what to say about this. At one point, he and fellow Salute Your Shorts castmates Blake Sennett and Michael Bauer also formed a band, but they were not able to land a record deal. Also, here's a cute clip of him singing as a kid. Aww. Kirk Bailey, who played Ugg, is someone I would have loved to see in more television roles because I felt like he played his character so well, but his career mostly consists of voice acting, though some roles genuinely surprised me. He's had a lot of voice roles in well-known animes such as Trigun, Cowboy Bebop, and Ghost in the Shell.
What's the use of growing up if the only thing that grows is your useless sentimentalism?
I do think his best role is still Ugg, even though he's had appearances in many television shows over the years. He has a lot of affection for his experience with Salute Your Shorts and still has his iconic Ugg hat, which he showed off at a panel a few years ago. As mentioned previously, Blake Sennett was briefly in a band with Danny Cooksey, but his biggest claim to fame is being the bassist for popular indie band Rilo Kiley. Jenny Lewis was also a child actor, interestingly enough, so I'm glad that these two came together to make awesome music. You may also remember him for his recurring role in Boy Meets World as Joey the Rat. Also, holy crap, Adam Scott! You'll have to forgive me for not going too in-depth for this part because most of the actors really went on to either have minor television roles, dabbled in voice acting, or just stepped out of the entertainment industry altogether. For example, Heidi Lucas did a lot of commercial work and had landed a few TV show roles, but ultimately she stepped away and became an attorney. Megan Berwick, who played Zizi, went on to receive her MA in International Political Economy in 2010 and currently works for a nonprofit organization. When asked about the cast, Steve Slavkin had this to say about Berwick. I don't think it's strange that Megan would become Zizi. She was a really special kid, and it's great to see that she's utilizing her skills to make the world a better place. The cast remembers their Salute Your Shorts experience very fondly. They've done a couple reunion panels, most notably at Kamikaze Expo, which was hosted by Andre Meadows, also known as the Black Nerd on YouTube, and at Everything Is Festival a few years later in 2015. It was really nice to listen to their overall positive experiences on the set and revisit some of that childhood nostalgia. Now for my final thoughts. If it wasn't made abundantly clear, I really loved this show as a kid, and I still really like it today as an adult. I watched the majority of the episodes before I wrote this, and there were very few I disliked, and I was surprised at the show's ability to make me laugh. Steve Slavkin had stated multiple times that in terms of casting, he wanted kids who were realistic, and acting ability was on the back burner, but I honestly think the kids acted very well and had great chemistry. It felt more believable and higher in quality than other shows at the time, and it really didn't age too terribly. Though I'm sad to say that I never really figured out what an awful waffle was. All I know is that it had syrup involved, and a tennis racket, and yelling awful waffle. This is the best I could find about the made-up prank you see in the show every now and then. Sounds sticky. I hope you enjoyed this look back at Salute Your Shorts and your warm and fuzzy nostalgia feels are in high gear. And don't worry, even though the thought of Camp Anawana made these kids feel slightly flatulent, I think it'll make you feel entertained. Hey everyone, thanks for watching my review. If you want to see more on classic television, check out the annotations. If you're rich and need to give away some of your wealth to lighten the load, consider donating to my Patreon campaign. Also remember that comments and smashing that like button, as dumb as it may sound, helps my channel grow greatly with no money involved. Thanks again, and see you guys in the next one.